And if this is your first time joining us, thank you for joining. My name is Sandeep, and today we have Gilbert. He's from Australia, and he has a very popular blog for moo.com, which I have followed for a very long time. And I would love to know at some point what does Formoo stand for, and how did he come up with that name?
Yep,
um,
that's all good.
yeah. And so my partner in crime, Parvinder, I think he's on a beach in Mexico. So he won't be joining us today. But so today I'll be the host. A little bit about myself, or maybe before we start there, Vancouver Fabric Power BI user group. We started this 3 months ago. This is our third month. So far, we have had really good response, and the community has been very positive. So very much thankful to everybody, all the presenters as well as the attendees for doing that. I have a blog at fabric.guru. I am very active in the community. I'm a senior Power BI architect at Hitachi Solutions. Yeah. And Gilbert, I'll ask you to introduce yourself, if you don't mind.
Yep, sure. Yeah, so I'm a Power BI or Fabric consultant or architect at my company Formoo. I have been a data platform MVP for a few years now, and you can find me on LinkedIn at Formoo or on Twitter or X as it's now known at Gilbert Q. And yeah, my blog is just formoo.com/blog.
Very nice. Thank you very much. And then before we start, so the recording has already started. While the presentation is going on, please mute yourself. If you have a question, please use the chat and then prefix it with a Q. I will be tracking the questions if you have any, and then depending on what the question is, I will raise my hand, Gilbert, and see if
Yep.
we can get that answered. Otherwise, we'll just wait until the end of the presentation for Gilbert to answer it. And then towards the end, there is also a brief survey that I would really appreciate if you can stay and then give us your feedback. Okay, so let's get started. I'll stop sharing, and then Gilbert, if you can share your screen.
Yep. Let's see if it works. Oh, yes.
Yep, I can see it.
Cool. Yeah, just takes a little while to come up. Okay. Yeah, thanks, Sandeep, for the introduction. Excited to be presenting. This is the first time I'm presenting on this particular topic, but it's not the first time that I have used it. I have actually used the Power BI performance load testing quite extensively with some other customers, and I'll go through all the slides explaining exactly what that is and what it's about, etc. So I'm going to skip this slide. We've already been through this one in terms of a little bit about me. Just quickly, a bit about what I do is I also have got some accelerators, what I call. So this is just for people who are looking to get information or get solutions implemented to quickly and efficiently get access to your data. So for things like getting scanner API data or log activity or Fabric capacity metrics, where we've got a solution that will keep your history for longer than what you have as the default 14 days, as well as more insights and that kind of stuff. So yeah, so if you're interested in anything around that, go to formoo.com/accelerator. Okay, so on to today's topic. So I thought I'd start off with what is performance load testing. So the load testing is where we're testing multiple people running reports concurrently, because that's typically what you want to know is, when you're a person who's developing the report, you're like, oh, I'm testing it, it seems fine, etc. It seems to run really fast. But quite often what's the case for organizations is they might say, okay, we've got this report, but we're going to deploy it to 100, 1,000, you know, a whole lot of people. What is the performance going to be like? And not only for the performance of the report, what other aspects could that actually do? And when you are looking to do performance load testing, sometimes it can be quite a challenge. How do you do the load testing? How do you ensure that things are done in a sort of random fashion that users would do? Because not every user is going to actually click on the same thing. Not every user is going to interact with the report the same way. So by looking at this and going through the performance testing, you want to try and replicate those scenarios. So you want to be able to have a way that things can be done randomly, but you can configure in terms of what are they going to interact and how they're going to do. And then other aspects like, you know, how long does it, once the page is loaded with whatever's been selected, how long do people stay on there for? Because that's another aspect. It's all good and well to say, I'm going to load test this, but it's going to change every 5 seconds. When typically people, you know, the way it typically works is they filter something and then they're going to digest the information and then might make a change and come back and digest that information. So, you know, that's where, for me, the performance load testing, you need to try and align to have all those things in place so that you can try and replicate something as close as possible to what is going to be experienced once these reports are deployed. So some of the goals or outcomes that we're looking to achieve when doing the load testing. The first one is the report's performance. So how do the reports perform? How long does the page take to load when it loads up? You know, how long do the visuals take, you know, when things are changed? The next one, capacity usage. Typically, these reports, when you're deploying and you're almost doing performance load testing, you're typically having your reports on some type of premium capacity, or these days, let's just say fabric capacity. So you also want to know how much capacity units are these reports going to consume, because that factors into what sizing capacity you need. And when you're also using interactive reports, Power BI reports, those are interactive queries, meaning that they get measured every 5 to 6 minutes in terms of capacity usage. And if you're bursting and exceeding your 100% of that, there could be a potential where the reports are going to start getting throttled. So that's where you want to performance load test this beforehand to know what size and capacity we need, how we're going to manage this, etc. Also, from this, you can see which pages take longer to load and might need some additional work. So that could potentially be, is it because there's lots of filters selected? Is a page taking long to load? Is it a visual type? Or potentially, do we have to look at the way the model is done, coming back to that star schema, which we always have? And do we need to remodel this so that it's a more effective star schema, which will then make the DAX simpler, which then will use less capacity units to make not only the reports run faster, but also use less capacity. And again, you know, one of the goals is automation so that this can be retested. For example, you could have a report page that's taking a long time to load. From there, you know, you make some changes, maybe the DAX changes, maybe the model changes, and then coming back using the same test and retesting and then seeing in terms of how does that actually change? Has it made it better? Has it made it worse? Sometimes, you know, things appear better. Sometimes things could change and appear worse. So that automation just helps with regards to getting that all in place and making sure that you can consistently check that. So that's pretty much the reason about that came about. And what I actually have found quite interesting is chatting to other people and seeing it myself, is that quite often people are like, oh, we're going to deploy these reports to 1,000 users that potentially are going to look at the reports. While in reality, quite often, you might not even have 50 to 100 concurrent users actually running them at the same time, doing the same thing, because everyone's got a different time schedule in their day. So while over the period of a day, more people might look at it, it's quite often not the case that everyone is, going and running the reports quite intensively all at the same time. So when doing the load testing, while it's quite easy to test it and to scale that up, the testing, for me personally, there comes a point when, you know, you can keep on scaling it up, but in reality, is that going to be reflective of how many people are using it? But the nice thing is with this tool, it's pretty easy to just scale that up, test it, and scale it back down. So my second to last slide is pretty much what I'm going to be doing today. And as asked previously, all you need to do this is you just need to have PowerShell running on your local PC, access to Power BI reports, and ideally access to what I said here as Power BI Premium or Fabric or Log Analytics. And the reason for that is so that you can see what is the direct impact of the reports that you run on your capacity. So you could, for instance, spin up you know, if you're on the trial, you could have an F64 and measure that, or you could spin up, say, an F16 and run it and actually see what happens by using the premium capacity metrics in order to measure that. So, yeah, it's pretty easy to do in terms of getting this testing going. Okay, so I'm now going to switch to this screen over here. So starting off with, where does this information come from? Where can you get it from? As you can see on the screen, this was originally created by, I'm going to say, I just want to see, I don't want to get it wrong. Now, yeah, as you can see over here, it looks like it was David who originally created this. So as you can see, while it says it's been archived, it still applies, all the code still works, etc. So all you got to do is you just got to go to this GitHub repository and then actually just download the entire repository. Everything is in there, and all the parts that I explained in here is what I'm going to go through and show you today, how to configure it and how it works, etc. Because it can get a little bit tricky just understanding the configuration and how that all works. So yeah, so what I've pretty much done is I've downloaded this already, and as you can see on the screen here, what happens when you download it is the folder you need to go to is the realistic load testing tool. So as you can see in here, there's a couple PowerShell scripts, some examples, etc. So the first one that I need to use is the setting up. So let me just open this one over here, and let me just bring this up here, make this, I think, does it work in here to make it bigger? No. Okay, I'm just waiting to see. So Sandeep, can you just confirm that the screen has changed?
So right now I see your VS Code.
Okay. Okay, cool. I just wanted to make sure that it is working, because I'm just checking, because I know I've had problems with my screen sharing in the past, so it looks like it's either lagging or it's not working.
Yeah, it's lagging a little bit. Maybe if you try unsharing and sharing again.
Okay, let me try that once. Otherwise, if this doesn't work, what I'll do is I'll just switch to my other monitor. So let me just try stop. Let me try it once more. Okay, let's just see. Okay. Okay, that looks like it's now working, because I'm actually watching it on another screen. Okay, so the first thing, once you've downloaded the file, the first part is the is where you've got to run the first file, which is the setup load test. So what this PowerShell script does is it actually is setting it up in terms of having to, what it does, it basically logs in, grabs your authentication token, and says which reports do you want to run or configure. So this again, I'm definitely not a PowerShell expert. Typically, all that I do over here is I can then just go and say I just want to run and debug this. So the first thing that comes up, it says, where's the directory where you want to actually store these files that you now want to use. So what I'm going to do, I'm just going to copy the same location in here, and I'm going to paste it in there. No, I think I've got it. Yeah, right click and paste. So as you can see, that's coming in. And ideally, I would suggest if you have folders, it's just a lot easier when there's no spaces in the folders. So what I'll do is I'll click OK. Now it'll ask how many reports you can configure, because in the configuration, you can configure more than one report. So I typically, in this example, I'm just going to configure one report. And when I'm going through the process, I'll also show you where you can go to actually just modify the report, modify the files that get created if you've got more than one report without having to come back and redo this. So what I'm going to do over here, I'm just going to say I want to configure one report, and then it's going to ask me to log in. So I'm going to log in over here, and then if I go back, now what it'll do, it'll come up, and let me just expand this bit. And so now that I've logged in, it's pretty much come back and said, oh, you know, which workspace do you have the report that you want? So in my one, it is number 49. So I'm just going to click on 49. And then what it does, it comes back and saying, okay, which report do you actually want to configure? So I'm going to select number 1, my log analytics queries report. And after that, you're like, oh, okay, it's now done. And it's actually done something in the background. So if I go back to my folder over here, what you'll see is there's now a folder with today's date and time. Obviously, I'm 1 day ahead because I'm in Australia. But when I double click on here, what you'll see is there's 3 files that's created. I've got the report.json, which is where I'm going to go and then create all the configurations for the report test, load test, and I want to do. The PBR token.json, that is the authentication token that got just created. And that token by default will last for 60 minutes. After 60 minutes, that token will expire. And I'll show you how later on I recreate that token when needed. And then the realistic load test.html, that is the web page that will then start running these load tests once we've completed the configuration files. So in order to now configure my report, what I want to just do is to show you, you need to know what you want to test. So if I just come back to this report, so this is the actual report that I want to test that I have on screen. Now, obviously, the other thing I think is critical when doing these report testing is to find out what slices, filters, etc. are users typically going to use, because quite often when you create these Power BI semantic models, there's loads of different ways people can interact with the report. It's almost sometimes like the combinations are quite huge. So what I typically ask customers is saying, what is the normal day-to-day things people are going to actually be doing when they're interacting with the reports? Because you don't want to test too little, you don't want to test too much, but you also want to test the things that you think they typically going to actually be interacting with. So in terms of what I'm going to be doing today and setting this up, one of the things that I want to do, if I just click on edit here, is I want to use the executing user, this value over here in this particular column over here is one of the ones that I want to be able to filter on that in terms of getting that working. And then the other one is I have the slicer over here, which is the customer key. And again, I don't want to go too much detail with regards to this. I just want to keep it fairly light. You know, when it's the first time you're using this, you can add more filters and more slices, etc. But I just wanted to just use one slicer and one filter. And the reason for the filter is that as you can see on this page, by default, there is no, say, executing user. It only exists on this, say, this table here on the right. But with the load testing tool, you can enable filters, so you can filter the data even though it's not available on the actual report page. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is, I know what I want to filter. If I go back to my JSON file over here, and I'll open this in, let me just make this a bit bigger like that. So by default, when I open up this pre-configured report JSON, PBR report.json, what it's done over here in the report URL on line number 2 is it's actually put in the embed code. So as you can see over here, where it's got this report ID of FC if I had to go back to over here, you can see that that has also got the same. So it's basically just pre-populated those details with the report ID and the workspace ID, which you can see over here. So again, that's nice and good in terms of that. So what it has next is the session restart. So after how many times do you want it to restart from scratch? And the next one it has over here, what they call is a think time second. So that's how long once the page is loaded, do you want that page to actually just stay there? So in terms of people actually digesting the report, while the default is 1, for me, in reality, it's not like a person clicks on it and 1 second later it makes a change and 1 second later it makes a change. So what I'm going to do today, I'm just going to set that to 10 seconds, just so that when we're going through it, you can see it refreshing fairly quickly. But again, this is normally, in my experience, will be something like 20 or 30 seconds that the users are looking at the report and then changing from that. So the next part is what we need to configure is we need to configure the page name. So again, there is a sample with this. So what I now can do is over here, one of the additional parameters is what's the page name that you want. So, and the reason for that is that you can obviously have more than one page within your report. So for example, if I just go back over here, sometimes I could have an additional page over here, for example. And what you'll see is when I change between the pages, I have the report section, and that gives me the report grid, and the next / is actually the report page ID. And I know sometimes this can be a little bit tricky because you've got to use GUIDs, etc. So if I just go back, so what I'm now doing is I'm actually getting the page name from the Power BI service, because that's the one that I want to actually show. And when I come back here, I actually want to put in the page name. And the reason for this again is that you can have the same configurations, but just going to different pages. So pages could be showing different visuals, but you want to apply the same filters or slices in there. So the next section that I'm going to do or create is the what do I want to actually filter or slice on the page, so that every time it loads, it's dynamically going to change it. So what I actually do is in the next section over here, I'm going to put in the filters section. Sorry, I need to put a comma over here. There we go. So now in the filters section, do that. I'm now going to say, okay, what do I want to filter? And this is where it becomes important to know what you need to get is you need to get the filter table and the filter column that is going to be applied. So if I just come in here and I'll just put in, let's start with the filter table. And then I'm going to go, hang on, got something else here. Let's just get this right in the beginning, because otherwise I know what will happen is I'll forget later on. So over here I want the filter table, and then I want the filter column. Can't spell today. Okay. So now what I want to do is I'm going to go back to my report over here. And the first one that I want to filter is the executing user. So, and it needs to match exactly what that is. So I can see over here, it's executing space user and executing user without a space. So typically what you can do if you have this open in Power BI Desktop is you could right click, rename, etc. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to cheat a little bit. I have got this on another screen. And I'm just going to come in here and I'm going to say, okay, my filter table is the executing user. And then the column that I want to apply the filters to is again the executing user. The next option is to say, is this a filter or is this a slicer? So typically a slicer is on the page, a filter is on the right-hand side filter pane. So in this one, what I'm going to do is I'm going to say, is slicer, and over here I'm going to say is equal to false. So what that means is this is actually going to be a filter in the filtering pane, and I'll show you once this is running what that actually looks like, so allowing you to then just do that. So the final section is which items do I actually want to filter. So and that is in the filter list. So what you can see over here is in the filter list, null means do not filter anything, which you can put in to just show me all, just select all the values by default. Or you can then just comma separate and actually then put which filters you want applied. So again, if you want to get these values, what I typically do is I'll open up the report like here, I'll click on a new page, and I will then get these actual values depending on that, so that not only can I extract them and copy them out so it'll filter correctly, so that it'll actually work and get those items. So that is the first filter that I'm going to apply. What I'm then going to do is I'm then going to go and apply a second set of filters, but this time I'm going to use the slicer instead. So what I'm going to do, I'm just going to actually copy this over here. But easier, I don't need to type it out twice. But now what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be filtering on the customer key. So again, if I go back over here and I'll go to my shortcut fact sales table and I'll put in the customer key and I'll say do not sum. Actually, I'll just do it this way. Why isn't it allowing me to? Oh, there we go. Do not summarize. Then obviously I could get all the values. So in today's example, I'm not going to put in all the values because that'll take a long time. But depending on that, it might be something that you want to do. So again, I need the table name and I need the column name. So just coming back over here, what I'm going to do is I'm going to put in the table name. Replace this over here with the table name, and customer key is the column name. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to say that the slicer is set to true because it actually is a slicer on my report page. And this time for the actual filter list, this is going to change slightly. So what you can see I've done over here is I haven't left out the blanket. I've got a 0, 1, but what you can do for any of the filter items is you can actually create a list within a list, meaning you can, because sometimes people aren't going to only select ever one customer. They might select many customers, etc. So this is allowing you to have the flexibility to select one at a time or many at a time. And again, this comes back to chatting to the people who, like the business people, are they typically going to select one, many? And again, it could be for dates, are they going to select this month, last month, 5 months, etc. So again, just building that up so that you now have got all of that created. So essentially now what I have got is I've got the JSON file ready. and I've got my two filters I want to apply. I've got the page name. I want it to restart every 10 seconds. So if I save that, what I've found I have to do, it works best, funny enough, using Google Chrome in terms of running this, purely because it takes a bit of, it doesn't work right with the Edge browser. But yep, Sandeep, I see you've got your hands up.
Yeah, I'm guessing there is a step after that. So while we are on this report
Is there a,
JSON,
oh, hang on. Just
can you
give
hear
me
me okay?
1 sec, sorry, Sandeep, were you busy talking? I couldn't hear you.
Yeah, can you hear me okay now?
Yes, I can.
Okay, yeah, no, I was just gonna say it sounds like there is gonna be a step after this. So just wanted to see there is one question that we have while you are on this page.
Yep,
So Fernando asked is the .json that you're showing on the screen right now.
yep,
So this is after you created the PowerShell, right? So this is
yes.
the .json that you created.
Yeah, so the PowerShell script creates this report, PBR report.json automatically
Okay,
from the PowerShell script. I didn't have to
got it.
manually go and create the script.
Okay. And then in this case, you have one page. If you have multiple pages, you would just follow the same pattern, or how would you include multiple pages, or can you only do one page at a time?
I've only done one page at a time, ironically, because when I'm load testing, I wanted to test each page individually so
Okay.
that I would know which one is called, if there's an issue and the reports are loading slow or it's consuming a lot of capacity,
Mhm.
which page is that? I haven't tried more than one. I
Okay.
don't see it might work with more than one.
Okay.
I definitely know that when there have been one report with multiple report pages, I have changed that particular GUID, and then it will, when it starts testing, it will load that different page. So
Okay.
yeah.
And then the last question is, so when you have the filter list and the slicer list,
Yep.
is it one at a time, or is it like when it runs the test, it can grab multiple elements from that list or list of lists, and it's all combinations of all of those things?
It's a combination of all of those, and it actually does it in a random fashion.
Cool.
So
Okay.
yeah, so I'm going through the demo, you'll be able to see how it, and that's the nice part, is that because you don't know what users are going to select, you just rather want to say randomly,
Yeah.
select nothing, select one out of one, select nothing out of the other. So
Yeah.
yeah, it does it all in a random
Perfect.
fashion.
Okay. Thank you.
Cool. Praise. Okay, so now that that's saved, normally what I do is I'm actually going to just show you something here. I'm actually going to purposefully change it so it's wrong. And then I am going to get this over here. And let me just bring Google Chrome, as I said. And then let me just get this page over here and pop that in there. As I said, it typically works better in Chrome. So now what should happen is if this works, which it doesn't seem to. Why is it not? It should at least load up. Let's try. This is the right one. What's going on? I don't know why it's not even loading there. Which is a little bit unusual. Have I not done something wrong in my JSON? Because I know sometimes that, because I was typing it out, normally I don't type it out. Let me just go back over here. So I'll just make sure I haven't done something wrong, as usual. You test this beforehand and it seems to work fine. Sufficient. Oh, wait. Here we go. I think it is. What have I done? There's no comma. Hopefully that's it. Let's try again. Aha. Okay. So what should happen? Thanks. It's these commas get you all the time. So after about 10 seconds, this should load. But what I actually want to do is I just quickly I want to break. Did I not? Ah, okay. What I actually want to do quickly to show you, apologies before I go into the actual load testing, is let me just, one of the cool things that it does, and again, this is from the code. If you see on the right here, it's got the filter, which I said it will apply. But what should happen is on the next load, sometimes it'll actually tell you if there's an issue with the actual page. So let me just go and fix that. And again, when I'm running this, you can just click on the refresh button to start it again. And what you'll see now doing is every time it loads, it's loading correctly. It's only selected the Power BI service user and the 0 key. So that page is loaded. And after about 10 seconds, it should start again. And now what you'll see, it tells me how many refreshes it's done, the average seconds. And as you can see, everything's changed in terms of what it's actually filtering and slicing. So, and that second average refresh time will change, get better over time. Sometimes in the beginning, it takes a little while. And as you can see, obviously, looking at this and waiting 10 seconds, it feels like the 10 seconds is a long time in terms of that actually going through and doing it. But and I initially always just recommend first testing it this way, just to make sure that it's actually going to load right. There's no errors. The authentication token, etc., is actually running correctly. So now that I'm happy that that's actually running, the next step, what I want to do is I actually want to run this, but I want to load it up. I want to, in this example, I'm just going to say I want to load test this with 10 concurrent users. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go and open up this file. So what this file is, it's not included in the original one didn't work. So I managed to find this piece of code thanks to ChatGTP, and I've managed to get it so that I can do the same load testing. So all I'm going to do is I'm just going to come over here, change this folder to the current one. And what I can then do is basically run this over here, and it says how many times do I want to run it. So I want to run 10 of these at the same time. So then what should happen is, as you can see, this should then automatically load up 10 browsers. It does take a little while. And what it's actually doing, believe it or not, is loading it on my other screen. Was it? There's one. Yeah, there's another one. And what you can see, I've just put this in the background. So basically waits 11 seconds and then just will iterate through and load those up in terms of what's actually happening. So as you can see over here, this is the most recent one that's loaded up, versus here is the first one that loaded up. And as you can see, it'll keep on adding these up. So the other thing just to be aware of is just to make sure that you've got enough CPU and memory when doing these load tests, because each one is opening up a new browser which consumes more resources. So again, just make sure you've got a VM where the bottleneck is not going to be your source system, because if that can't load the pages up and let them start running the refreshes fast enough, what that then means is you're then going to the bottleneck will be your computer, and you're not doing the load testing where each potential individual computers all loading this information up and getting that going. So as you can see over here, it just keeps on loading up those pages, and those are running in the background. I did see something funny though, which I don't quite get, is that it seems to be stopping after 2 refreshes. Now, I don't know if it's a session restart here. I can't remember off the top of my ahead. So basically, anyway, as you can see now, it's completed the 10 times. So I have got all these different reports. Oh no, that one's going. Maybe this one's just a little bit slow. But as you can see, some of them are only 2. This one, but as you can see, when I flick through them, some of them have got slightly different filters, but I only selected a very small set of filters. So again, you can have this running for as long or as short as you want, depending on how long you want to test. Are people going to come in the morning and for the first 30 minutes, you expect to have, say, 50 people just running reports? And what's that going to look like? Or, is it going to be them 50 people, but they're running it every 1 minute, etc.? So that just then allows me to go through and actually do all the load testing based on the actual user requirements for that. So once I'm happy that that's done, I can then pretty much just close down all the browsers, all 10 of them. And the interesting thing is what I'll do in the meantime is let me just come back here. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to go back to my capacity metrics and just refresh that. The other thing that can happen is what happens when your token expires. So you've got 60 minutes and sometimes you're busy, you come back and all of a sudden what you'll see is all the reports will be failing because the token has expired. And what I have found is that the easiest way to recreate the token, there is another PowerShell script, but it doesn't seem to work, and I'm not smart enough to figure out why it's not doing that. So all that I do, if it's not working after, or I need to refresh the token, I'll basically just come back to my setup test over here. I just run and debug it again. I'd say, okay, I want to refresh one report. And if sorry, I clicked on the wrong button. Let me just reshare again. It was right near the top. Apologies for that. Hopefully this will come back up. There we go. So all that I do is I just go, basically like I'm simulating the test again. So all that I do is I come back, I put in the location. So I want to configure one report, sorry. I log in. I then go back to my over here, and you can almost select anything. But all I'm actually want to do is I just want to get that actual token. So once it's actually created, if I go back, you can see now I've got 2 folders, one at 11.08 and one at 11.34. So all that I do is I'll just come back in here. I'll copy that token, PBR token.json. I'll go back to where I've got my existing ones and I'll just replace it. Just overwrite it, because everything else, the report parameters, everything else is the same. And then if I wanted to test it, I'll just open it up and have it working like that. Because what actually happens is if I go, I can show you where is it? Oh yeah, here. I think I've put in your old files. So if I take this old one over here, just to show you what this looks like, and I'll go to my current one and I'll replace it. If I now go back over here and I'll give this a nice little refresh, this is what you'll actually get. And the nice thing is it's actually pretty good. At least it tells you, hey, the token's expired this. Sometimes the error message we get in Microsoft can be a bit challenging in terms of, something went wrong, show details. At least this one is actually not bad, but it's also nice that it has it in there so that you can actually go, oh, okay, hang on, my token's expired. All I need to do is refresh the token and I can continue with that. So the other thing I can then do is if I come back to my capacity metrics, because again, I am running this in a fabric. Obviously, it's a trial capacity, but what we should hopefully see and I don't expect it to be very high, to be honest. This is today, and let's see if it did much impact, because obviously the report's really light in terms of, let me just expand this. And as you can see, there's a tiny blip. I don't even know if you'll see it. You can almost see it over here. It's really small. In terms of the interactive process, let's see if I can right click that. I might get lucky. And let's see. So obviously, typically when you're doing a bigger load test with larger reports, more things going on, this would be a lot higher. So let me just see if I go over here. The time I might have is a bit too early. No, I haven't selected it. And this is again coming back to where these capacity usage metric report, while they are interesting, it can be quite a challenge to actually get this information out. Again, like over here where I'm looking for something really small, I think I'd have to filter that. Did I click on Friday the 13th? And oh, it is Friday the 13th. Interesting. And it also might be, sometimes I know there is a bit of a lag getting the data in, because we've been doing this after 11. But typically what you should see is you'll see a nice big spike, the red, with your interactive processor saying, hey, you know, you can actually then see, you know, in terms of, oh, are you getting close to that 100% in terms of your performance, and how would that affect your capacity when you potentially can factor in you have other things running on your fabric capacities, which might impact or might not impact it, because depending on your background in interactive processes, where it does get pretty tricky in terms of trying to understand the usage patterns and etc. in terms of what's going on. And that's pretty much the load testing in a shortened and sweetened version. Are there any questions?
Yeah.
Cool.
So when you were showing that, there was like up on the top left of the screen, it showed
Yep.
like a hyphen and then the average.
Yes.
Does it mean anything, or is it just a hyphen, or?
So it typically means let me just give me 1 sec. Let me go get it. Let me just come over here. What I'm going to do is just copy this back in. And let me come back here and give that a refresh. Let's just let it go once more. Is this on? Are you talking over here on the top left? Is
Yeah,
that?
I think so. Yep. So when you
Oh,
were
yeah,
doing that, yeah, there you go.
Yes. Yeah. So typically the hyphen normally means it's negative, which is obviously it can't be. But what I've found over time is typically it should go positive in terms of the first time. Sometimes I think it just, the way obviously this page is designed in terms of measuring that, I think it can get not quite right. But I'm also not sure why it only refreshes twice. I've definitely had it where I've had it refreshing for like 10-15 minutes at 15-second intervals, and it will just keep on refreshing. Because also what you can do, just to show you, is if I go back to the folder over here, and I think it's demo 2. Here is an example of oh, that's the other part I missed out. Is here's a sample in terms of the actual, you know, if you wanted to just go see what it is. There also is an option for bookmarks, because sometimes, you know, you've got bookmarks that might show and hide certain things. And again, it does have that functionality. What you'll do is when you're in the browser and you click on a bookmark, it'll actually say / I think it's / bookmark ID, and then it gives you the actual ID for that. So you can also factor in the randomness of which bookmark and all of those coming in. I wonder if it's because I've got this over here, and I had to take that out from there. I'm not sure. I'm just, and then I had to come back. And again, I found some weird stuff happening in Edge where it doesn't seem to keep on refreshing as expected. But yeah, that hyphen should go positive as far as I'm aware.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm just checking on these other ones I had open. Yeah. And again, to me, that's just an indication in terms of, how long the pages are taking to load.
Okay. Okay. And then Fernando, another question he has: do you need to be in the same tenant to perform the testing? So he's clarifying. I'm thinking if you could perform this test for a client.
I would imagine so because, well, I've only tested it when when I work with customers, I always ask to get a local account because there's just so many limitations and weird things that just don't work as a guest user. Where, oh yes, you can view the report as a user, as a guest user, but these kind of things I would recommend. You just want to remove those potential errors or boundaries so that you can actually then just go and refresh. Do the load testing where it's as a normal user coming in and doing those load testing. So
Okay.
I haven't tried it being an external user. It will be interesting because you might be able to triple their capacity if you do this and it goes and does a whole lot of weird and wonderful things.
And then if you others, if you have any questions, please feel free to raise your hand or put it in the chat. Okay, Fernando has a follow-up, but do you need
Yep.
any permissions from them?
No, if at the end of the day, this is just viewing it's like viewing the report at the end of the day. So no, as long as you got permissions to view the report and you've got access to PowerShell or Visual Studio Code as I have over here, which at least with Visual Studio Code, I don't think let me just double check. I just wanted to just see if there was any particular PowerShell scripts that it installs, and it actually doesn't. It's far more. Actually, I lie. I think it. Where is it? I think you do need one PowerShell script, PowerShell module to be installed, which I should have mentioned in the beginning. I'm pretty sure. Let me just give me a second. Where does it log in?
It's probably the PowerShell, I guess the Power BI commandlet, right?
Yes, yeah.
Yeah.
So the only challenge would be you'd need to have that installed, and typically you need to have admin permissions on your laptop or PC to install.
But
And
any
I know some
user,
places that, yep.
yeah, so any report user who has access to that data set, right? Or is it the report that you have to have access to? Any user who has access to the report can probably simulate this, right?
Yes, yeah. Because all it's really doing is when it starts using the browser like this, it's a little bit of HTML code, but it's assuming that's why when you log in, it authenticates under your local user account. So it's replicating. It's me logging in to that. So yeah, so that would work. I guess the only challenge then would be is if you do over consumer capacity that is being used, etc., they'll know exactly who it was through the logs to go. You were the one who killed our capacity for half an hour, kind of thing. So yeah. So but yeah, that'll work.
And then so the requirement that you have to have premium, that's mostly because you can track your consumption, right? But you could essentially do this for a pro right workspace as well.
100%, yeah. The only caveat then is besides you watching it running and on the second average refresh time, you wouldn't know, what's that usage like. But then if you're using Pro, you don't get penalized on how much capacity it's using because there's no concept of capacity usage. Same with premium per user. It might slow you down a bit, but you don't get. It's not like fabric capacity where if you keep on doing interactive, eventually it starts throttling you. And if you keep on doing that, then it will eventually just start blocking you eventually. So yeah.
Okay. And it doesn't save those refresh it doesn't save any refresh data or anything locally. Right. So when
No.
you are refreshing this, so you had like 10 browsers open at the same
Yep.
time, but it doesn't necessarily save like what are those refresh times for each of those browsers or anything. You have to manually track that.
Yes, that's correct. Yeah. Yeah. And that's why I guess typically for me in the past, the load testing is done with customers who are running premium because they want to say use the free users, etc. So
Yeah.
because I've got a way of measuring the performance, I haven't had to go manually and track each one of the browsers and say, what was the average, second refresh time for that. But it is also a good indication to know, this page should load relatively quickly. And if you come and you go through and you see 20, 30, 40, 40, 40 seconds, you can go, oh, okay, hang on. This might be something I need to investigate.
Yep. What would be interesting is just thinking aloud here. So
Mm-hmm.
as a developer, you would obviously you would go to performance analyzer, run it locally, right? And then you would
Mm-hmm.
see that that particular page maybe refreshes is in 3 seconds. But
Yeah.
that is your computer, right? And then when you publish it to service, there is no way for you to do that because it is in service. So this is how you would do that, right? You would
Yeah.
simulate this and see what is the performance delta between the two. So at least if
Mm.
you do it once, it gives you good enough indication that whatever you have on your machine, maybe add, just double that or triple that,
Mm.
whatever, you're seeing it. So that
Yeah.
tells you if in service, because you have fewer cores and so there is not as much concurrency, that what is that performance delta between the two?
Yeah, absolutely. 100%, And again, you could also, like you say, you could even spin up an F2 and say, okay, what does this look like on an F2 where I'll have
Yeah,
less cores, less memory? What
good
does that
point. Yeah.
perform like? And then and the reason I often say is the F2 is typically, even though you might pause it, it will only cost you $1 or two to test something out and pause it again, you know?
Yeah.
In terms of, just getting some of those statistics.
Yep. Another, I think, just thinking about this, couple of options that might be worth exploring, and I don't know if the tool itself can do it or not.
Hmm.
But one is like query caching, where if you
Yep.
turn that on for the data at the data set level, and then
Mhm.
run it, and then you can see if it helps or if it does not help, and then query scale out, right? Because query scale out is
Mm.
supposed to help you with concurrency. So that should also be a good, because when you set up the query scale out, there is you can set how many replicas that you want to set up for the query scale out, and
Yeah.
there is no good way to say, okay, what is a good number, right? But then if you do it this way, then
Mm.
you can simulate it for a few different replicas, number of replicas, and that should
Yeah.
give you a good enough confidence, right? That if you have to set it at 5, so you're not consuming your capacity too much, but you are seeing improvement in load times.
Yeah, because and my understanding, I could be correct, but I remember that this query caching here it actually caches it on the browser side, not in the service. That query caching over there. Um, so that was my understanding of. Obviously, there's caching within the analysis services engine, but then this is where the caching actually happens. And I stand to be corrected, but I do remember chatting to them a while ago and
Okay.
saying that this is more, it actually caches those results in the browser so that if user runs it, it actually just returns within the browser session. It doesn't even go back to the Power BI service
Yeah,
kind of thing.
right, correct. And that is only for the first load, like for the first page
Yeah,
itself. If you go to the second, it's not cached. So it is only
yeah,
meant for your startup or improve your startup refresh and nothing more.
yeah,
So
yeah,
where you
yeah.
had, I think, where you were refreshing and it was closing the window and then starting it up again,
Yeah.
because you are one single person, I think that's where, so maybe it would be a good idea to turn that on, turn that off, and
Mm,
see the difference between the two.
yeah,
Yeah. Okay.
100%. Yeah, because it would be interesting, as you're saying, it's very good points with the query caching and the query scale out, you know? Or does it
Yeah.
get better? Does it get worse? Does it consume more capacity? Less? What is the best fit for purpose? And again, I'm sure, as Sandeep, as you say many times a day, is always it depends. Is the answer.
There you
It
go.
just there's too many different variables. It could work for one customer, works this way, that's on, that's off, both. But and then for another customer, let me no, you just the best thing to do is to test.
Okay. Any other questions? Anybody
I
has?
see
Oh, okay. Yeah, by Tim.
Tim's got a question. Yeah. Is
Mhm.
there any interesting results for direct query visuals? I actually haven't tested direct query. What I have tested, funnily enough, is an import mode in fabric capacity and a direct lake in fabric capacity, where the models are identical. Everything, they're the same size, they're the same measures, they're the same schema, And what I found is the performance was pretty close, because what I was doing in terms of testing that, I was using this as well as DAX Studio and doing the benchmark testing just with queries, just literally thrashing queries at it. And what I found interesting is that the import would go over 100%, would burst above the capacity, but the direct lake would not burst above the capacity, the capacity usage, which I found a bit interesting. Obviously, it was just I've done two different tests on two different semantic models, but for me, obviously the way direct lake works is very different to the way the import mode works and how that affects the capacity. So potentially to what Greg was saying earlier with regards to looking at direct lake and the advantages, that might be a potential advantage of using direct lake, is because as long as you don't go over 100% of your capacity, you're never going to get throttled. So
Yeah,
again, something to
that is an
test.
interesting test. Yeah,
Yeah.
that would be really actually good to see that if there is an advantage there, if it is generating the exact same queries, or we shouldn't even care if it is generating exact same query plans or not. But as long as the results are the same,
Yeah.
then perhaps, right, directly maybe generating some efficient queries in some for some visuals and some attacks than others. But
Yeah.
yeah, that would be an interesting one to see.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. And
Thanks
I did
for
test it twice. Yeah. Because I couldn't remember, and I wasn't convinced that, it did work. And then I tested on a completely different thing and I got the same results. So with the
okay.
same measures, the DAX
Yeah.
model, everything was identical. Yeah. Sorry, Greg.
No, that was just exactly the question I was going to pose. You guys just jumped right ahead into that. Is it when you were doing the direct lake and DAX Studio, is there anything one needs to know? Does a VertiPack analyzer work the same way? Is there anything nuanced there?
Well, the VertiPack analyzer will not return anything because nothing's stored in memory in direct lake. It's always getting it. Obviously, there's a memory component to it,
Yeah,
but
when it's
nothing's
in
actually
depth,
stored.
the query time, doesn't you bring it in? That's where I want to better understand the architecture and what's really going on under the hood.
Yeah, so you will still see the storage engine time and the formula engine time, because the formula engine sometimes has got to collate the results from the storage engine before returning it, back to the results. So and there is still storage engine time where instead of it going into in-memory storage, it's actually just going to, say, the Parquet storage and just shifting that in. And I guess the fundamental difference is in direct lake, it will only bring in those columns into memory that can answer the question. So if you've got 10 columns in a table and you only need 2, so let's just say it's some sales amount and date, it'll only bring in those 2 columns into memory to answer that question. So versus import, it's going to bring in all 10 columns.
Right.
Preloaded into memory, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So sometimes you can get away in direct lake mode with actually consuming less memory for the same model, depending on what's being queried. Because obviously, if you query all 10 tables, it's going to put all 10 tables into memory. But if it's only ever doing a smaller subset, you could get away with, say, an F64 where the import mode is, let's just say 30 gigs of memory, but in Direct Lake, it works fine on F64 where the limit is 25 gigs of memory because it's not having to load the entire model into memory at once.
Right.
So you get these new things, new learnings coming out from Direct Lake, as well as obviously, for those near real-time kind of scenarios, the data is always just coming in and being refreshed.
Yeah, no, I really want to, and boy, did I hit pay dirt here. This is exactly Chris Webb and Phil Seamark didn't let me down. Yeah, this is where I want to be. I really want to just get into the mechanics and become expert in knowing all that stuff. So I really, it's Gilbert, with for whatever reasons, all this business with tokens, and I've just struggled with key vaults, and like I've never had like a killer way to keep track of all. I always feel like I get gummed at whenever I try, trying to do these examples on my own. I feel like I always get tied up. So I'm hoping, and this is a recorded session, right? So if you're gonna play along at home, I'm hopeful to be able to kind of work through my own examples of what you've done here tonight. So thank you.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah. And that's the thing, once you play around with it, it's like anything new. The first time is a bit rocky. And then, once you got it, what I always typically do is I just document everything. Once I know I've got a process that works, document it, try it a second time, and then I know, because sometimes, I might not come back to this for like 6 months for, just whatever reason. And then at least I know I've got a documented process, you can just come back and go, oh, okay, that's the step that I missed. And then you just, it saves you some time in the future.
Absolutely.
Awesome.
Excellent. Well, if we don't have any other questions, Gilbert, again, I want to thank you a lot. This was very informative. I learned something new from you, as I always do. So really appreciate you taking the time and then being here. So let me share my screen here for just 1 second as we wrap up things. We do have Alberto Ferrari. He in a week, is it week or 2 weeks? 2 weeks from now, or maybe less than that. So he'll be talking about visual calculations. And in fact, I believe this is like the first time he'll be talking about it or presenting on this topic. And I quote, he said, there is a lot that he wants to talk about. So I'm looking forward to this. I don't think I'll be able to attend because I'll be in Stockholm for the FabCon EU. So my friend Parvinder will be hosting him in person in Vancouver, but I will definitely be catching up that recording a little later. And then
I guess your group just lets anyone talk at your meetup. Like people that you find on the street.
Yeah, and then if you have any feedback for us, I'm just going to copy this into the chat and then let us know if there are any topics that you're interested in, any feedback that you might have. Yeah, but again, I want to thank all of you, and especially I want to thank Gilbert for taking the time and for this excellent presentation. So thank you again very much.
Yeah. No, thanks a lot. It's been awesome.
Sure.
Yep. For the rest of your day or evening.
Sandeep,
yep.
It's asking us for to log in the form.
Sorry, was there a question?
It's asking us to log in.
Or is it asking you to log in?
Yes.
Oh, okay. I don't know. I'll blame it on Parvinder for that. He set that up, so I'm not 100% sure. But I'll ask him, and then maybe we'll revisit it again tomorrow. I'll ping all of you in the same chat. Thank you very much.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Yeah. Bye-bye.
Yeah.